Hello, everyone, and welcome to the course of world history. I am your host, Mr. Samuelson, and today we are looking at the rise of fascism in Europe. Our essential question today is, how did fascists rise to power in Italy and in Spain? So, the triumph of democracy. To some, many, World War I was fought to make the world safe for democracy. That was the idea expressed by Woodrow Wilson. Following the war, democratic institutions spread, and nearly all of Europe has a democratic government. But instability during the post war years, and then boom, the Great Depression, shake people's faith in these institutions. And as the economy starts to tank, people start to question the ability of their new government. Totalitarian states wind up being a solution in many people's eyes. Now, the alternative to democracy, they wind up being these authoritarian or totalitarian states. We'll talk about authoritarian states later, but totalitarian states are ones that want to control all aspects of a citizen's life: their economic life, social life, political life, and cultural life all come under the authority of a government. Now, individual rights in these systems are subordinate. Individual rights don't matter. All that matters is what is good for the whole, good for the masses. And the will of the masses, well, that's going to be expressed by the government. Almost always, not almost always, always through a single political party, and frequently with a single strong ruler. Italy winds up being an early example of totalitarianism in Europe. Post-war economic troubles and the Great Depression caused a lot of Italians to fear a communist takeover, and they did not want communism in their nation. And they saw, flirtations with socialism in other countries. Italy did not want it. On top of this, Italy was angry because the post-war settlements, the Paris Peace Conference, had treated Italy like a secondary player. And while they were rewarded as part of the winning team, the victors, their gains were very small, and they did not get much out of this peace agreement. And this really touched on Italian pride. Now, fear of communism, anger over the treatment of the Allies, drive Italians to look for a different path. And they wind up supporting the fascist ideas of this rising political figure, a military man, by the name of Benito Mussolini, this fellow right here. Mussolini believed in the glorification of the state above individuals, that the state was what was truly important. And he wished to create national pride in the Italian state by having all Italians unify behind a single image of the Italian nation. That what it was to be an Italian was one single, easily identifiable thing. Now, support for these nationalist fascist agenda leads to his appointment. He builds the support in the public, and the public is behind him. And so King Victor Emmanuel III, because it is a constitutional monarchy at that time, selects Benito Mussolini to be the prime minister of Italy, a position that holds more authority, more power really, than the king itself. Once in power, Mussolini quickly moves Italy toward a fascist dictatorship and outlaws all other political parties. And he has grand ideas of restoring the Roman Empire and being the power in Southern Europe and Northern Africa. We can see that in one of these pieces of propaganda about the Italians going to Africa and carving it up for their purposes. Now, in Italy, it is important for any government to have the support of the Catholic Church. And Mussolini works to court this support and to get the Catholic Church behind him. He does so by carving out an independent sovereign state for the Catholic Church in Italy. It's actually within the city of Rome itself, called the Vatican City. Now, ever since 1870, the Catholic Church had wanted this, but it had been denied. Mussolini gives it to them. They now have their own independent state. It's a teeny little thing, less than a square mile, but it's an independent state. Mussolini also proclaims that Catholicism will be the sole religion of the state of Italy. If you live in Italy, you must be a Catholic. There are no other options. If you are an Italian, by definition, that means you are a Catholic. He also gave the church, the Catholic Church, a large sum of money to help them finance their new state. So with all these gifts to the Catholic Church in return gives public support to the dictatorship of Mussolini. So we have a firm fascist state in Italy. Mussolini takes the new title, Il Duce, the leader, and we'll see others follow this example throughout history. Franco in Spain, Hitler in Germany, and numerous leaders in North Korea have all taken a version of this name. Actually, it's all just the leader in their own language. He uses propaganda to build support and violent suppression to fight dissent, always pushing down the dissenters and propping up his beliefs. We see youth groups like this one over here that are formed to raise this new generation of absolute adherence to the idea that Mussolini is always right. Hitler is an admirer of Mussolini as he's doing this. Hitler is watching Mussolini carefully to learn how you take over a state and create a totalitarian government. And he learns his lessons well. Now, authoritarianism is a little different. Authoritarianism seeks to gets reestablished in many of the new nations created by this peace settlement. We talked about democracies and how they're failing because they couldn't solve the economic or ethnic problems. Most European states, Yugoslavia, for example, multi-ethnic, had no experience with democracy, and they quickly abandon it. Can't fix our problems. And they start looking for other solutions. Democracy wasn't working, ethnic divisions were causing gridlock, government was not functioning. So they switched to this authoritarian system that they were more used to, where landowners, the church, and the middle class, specifically the upper middle class, want an authoritarian leader back. And in many cases, they also go with military dictatorships, military strongman, who can enforce stability in their state. One other state that we're going to look at in a bit of detail is Spain. Spain faces the same post-war economic and social problems of much of Europe. The Depression comes along, and that kind of puts the kibosh on the Spanish monarchy for a while. Monarchy comes back in a constitutional form, but during the Depression, it is replaced by a Spanish republic. But the republic is weak, and it only lasts 5 years. Because of the weakness of this government, it encourages a military revolt by this fellow right here, an admirer of Mussolini. This is Francisco Franco. Learns about fascism, follows the example of Mussolini, and seizes power in Spain. Now, there is a pushback. Franco establishes this fascist government, but we get a civil war over it. And Franco's opponents wind up being supported by the British. The Germans and Italians, the Axis powers, enter the Spanish Civil War to back Franco. And they're backing Franco as a fellow fascist, but they're also backing him as a test for new weapons and new tactics. Because if a larger war were to break out in Europe, the Germans and Italians want to know how well they will do in it. Franco's dictatorships, however, uses a lighter hand than Italy or Germany. This is not a totalitarian fascist state. This is an authoritarian one, where Franco looks to support existing institutions of power and allow them to continue ruling the way they have forever. So the wealthy landed class, the church, they maintain their power bases. And Franco restores Spain to this authoritarianism, not totalitarianism. Franco will survive the wars and will continue to be the dictator in Spain all the way until 1975. So he winds up being a lasting figure in Spanish history. All right, that is all for today. I do hope that you learned something. I will see you next time. Farewell.